All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this live session. Today, we're really fortunate to have some of the amazing guys from Quixel to kind of give us just an overview of some of the projects that we're working on, but more importantly, to have Wiktor kind of take us through his workflow and how he utilizes this amazing project. So the two people that we have on the panel today are obviously Wiktor, who's a art lead at Quixel, and we also have Eric, who's an environment artist as well, has that background, but he's also currently the global account manager for Quixel. So guys, thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to let you guys take it off.
All right. Thank you for having us. Well, hello, everyone.
Hey.
So I'll start this off with some information about megascans. First off, let me say that we're overwhelmed by the interest in megascans. So we've decided to do another stream exclusively for it this summer here at CD Society. There we will show the library, how it works, everything that's included in the subscription. This stream is primarily focused on Suite 2, but we have agreed to reveal a few of the natural environments that are part of the library, as well as cover the basics of the service. Now, everything in these images that Wiktor is showing right now is 100% made with megascans.
That's amazing. When I first saw these, I actually thought these were all photographs because they look so good, the level of detail.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. So Megascans is right now in its final beta test, and it's currently being used in several major productions, most recently Disney's Jungle Book, where it helped the team at MPC to create all the jungle environments. It was also used extensively in the Unity Atom demo, which was released yesterday. And if you haven't seen that already, you should go check it out. They did a really good job on it. Now, the library itself contains thousands of scans from 4 different continents and countless biomes. There are 3D assets, surface scans, and a vast vegetation library, as you can see here in the background. Now, the service will be subscription-based. Hobbyists and freelancers can sign up for on a monthly basis, and we have gone to great lengths to make it super affordable. Now, we also have a few surprises for you guys, which includes our first line of fully standalone tools for Windows, Mac, and Linux, which we're very excited about, and I know a lot of you have been asking for. We'll have more information about this shortly. But remember, Megascans is in fact coming soon, but at least before Half-Life 3. But I'll hand it over to Wiktor here. Finish this slideshow, and we'll get back to some texturing action with the suite.
Yeah. So just.
And you did hear standalone. That was correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that Stephen asked that. Yeah.
Right, so I think that was the last image.
Cool. This is absolutely amazing. I'm still blown away by just the quality and the fidelity of just the textures and just the resolution. So I cannot wait to get my hands on that.
Awesome. Right. So what I'll be doing today is I'll be showing you how I went about texturing this asset here, and this is an asset from my last environment. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's a space station based on the SpaceX design. So I took a small asset, and this is what we'll be texturing. So let's close this down and take it from the start. So what we'll see here is the base creator here on the left. Let me just close down 3Do. There we go. So in the base creator, this is where you set up your project. So you set up your input maps and your mesh. So I'll go ahead and find my mesh and my material ID map. And the material ID map, or color ID map, depending on what you want to say, is pretty much just a flat diffuse map that you bake out from any software you want. And this helps DDO separate your texture into different groups and so on, which we'll go into later. And I'll also specify my normal map. And this normal map has been edited with mdo. which is the normal creation toolkit. I could show some of that later, but I want to focus on Dido, the texturing toolkit, for this session. And I'm also going to specify the occlusion map. Use a regular occlusion. And you can set the resolution, ID presets, which we'll talk about later, the target engine. So we have a whole bunch of different targets here, like renderers and engines and so on. But I'll just go with a specular PBR default one, and I'll hit create. So what it's doing now is, as you can see, maybe if you saw it before, I had some checkboxes checked here that said bake in 3Do, and that's what it's doing right now. It just baked out a gradient position map or position gradient map, as well as a object space normal map, which will be used to create like wear and tear on the materials and so on. So, yep, there we go. Let's get started. So right now it's just a flat gray texture, no details, no materials or anything. So this is what it looks like. Default lighting, default post-processing, and no materials. So what I like to do when I create a new project is I work very iteratively. So I just like assign stuff and I change them and I assign new stuff, delete, and so on. And that's super easy to do with Dido. So that's what I usually do first. So I'll just, first of all, create a new material by opening up the material browser. And I'm going to be creating a sort of carbon fiber material, which will be assigned to the like footrest or leg rest down here. So just create that, and it will be assigned across the entire model to begin with. But I'll go ahead and group this. So this layer structure, by the way, is very similar to that of Photoshop. So we have a group here with a layer inside. And if we go into this group, we have the layer inside here as well. So it's just a different way of showing or visualizing that structure. So now when we have this group, I'll just assign that to the color ID by holding down C and clicking on the model. So that'll assign the carbon fiber material down here. I'll go back in here and just scale it down so it becomes a lot smaller. There we go, that's a lot better. So I'll go ahead and make it darker, some small saturation to it, and I'll increase the glossiness. And lastly, I'll just decrease the texture intensity to make it a bit more subtle. So that's our carbon fiber. So let's move on and assign a, so this was just a regular material from the material browser. So there are two different sort of materials. There's a regular material such as this, like regular brick and like the patterns down here. And there's also the smart materials, which I'll show you now. So I'll go ahead and hold down C and Shift, and I'll just click this white area here, and this will open up the smart material browser. And there's a lot of different categories here, but I'm going to be going for a plastic. But just for the sake of this stream, let's just take a quick look at the different materials we have. So we have a lot of fabrics here. There's a whole bunch of different metals, like both regular ones. There's painted, anodized, rusted, and so on. So pretty much anything you can think of is in here. But I'll be going for a PVC plastic here, this one. So I'll just hit create, and this will create a group which has two different materials or layers inside of it, which makes it a smart material. There we go. So as you can see here in this list, we now have a new group called worn PVC plastic. So if I go in here, we have two layers. So this is our first smart material, and I'll just go ahead and tweak the colors a little bit, and yeah, to make it a bit more white. I think that works. I'll go back and tweak this later, but it's also worth mentioning that like all of this is completely non-destructive, so I can at any time go in here. I could change this to an orange if I wanted to. So completely non-destructive. So something like that. Perfect. Right. So let's keep moving. I'll go for the dark inside here, and I'll use another plastic here, sort of a grainy plastic, something like this, like a polymer. So the same thing there. I just held down C to see the color ID map, and then Shift while clicking to open up the material browser. So there we go. I'll just make this a little bit brighter, because there's going to be a lot of dark inside of this, or a lot of black areas inside of this chair. So I want to separate them a bit by, not by color, but by brightness. So there we go. We're finishing up the base here pretty quickly. And for this, I want another PVC plastic, and I'll go with the NES black instead of the white one. And now it asks me if I want to add this material inside the smart material that I just created, because I'm inside of it. But I don't want that, so I'll just hit no, and it's going to create the material. And maybe I should go over the UI a little bit as well. So up here we can see all the different maps. I'll just close down the 3D for you. So here we have the albedo. Next we have the gloss, the normal, and the specular, and they can all be adjusted, and they all have pretty much the same controls. Like the gloss have a different slider for the glossiness, the normal doesn't have that, and so on. But we'll be covering more and more of the UI as we go along.
Just jump in here and answer a question from DW. DW does not support projection painting yet, but it's a feature that we're working on currently.
Great, thanks for answering, calling that out, Eric. I was going to actually wait until Wiktor was done with his session, but obviously you jumped in for that, so thanks.
Yeah, if you want to ask a question, just stop me. I tend to talk a lot.
I know Wiktor so well, so I know I have to like cut him off.
So yeah, guys, if you guys have any questions, I know that Wiktor is doing his demo now, but if you have any questions, we already have a list of questions you guys have already asked us prior to the session, but if you have a bunch of questions, definitely feel free to just jot them, and we'll kind of just, sort those out accordingly. All right?
To answer your question, Pavel, this is a 4K texture that we're working on.
And you can work all the way up to 8K, 8K in DDU. I've actually worked on a project that had, I think, 3 8K texture sets, and the model was around 8 million triangles. So what I'm doing here is I'm just assigning the materials to the color IDs, and I think we're at a point where we can start tweaking a bit. So the first thing I want to show you is, so I assigned this chrome here to the buckles up here, and I noticed that I've missed to add the like bolts here, or what they're called, to the ID. Actually, I didn't miss it. I left them out just for the sake of this. But I'll go ahead and actually paint those in now after the project has been generated. So I'll go ahead and click the Edit Dynamask button here on the Chrome Smart Material group. And it asks me if I want to paint in full shaded mode, which I do. So the two options is paint mask mode or full shaded. Mask mode is quicker, full shaded is prettier and easier to see. So this opens up the painting tab here in 3Do. So we still have the options and import tab, but now we have access to the painting tab. And this allows me to do exactly what it sounds like. It allows me to paint directly onto the model. So what I'll do is, here's the mask. So as we saw before, the buckles have the material assigned, but we want to assign it to the bolt as well. So I'll go ahead and switch the color to a white. I'll go ahead and enable symmetry along the x-axis and just size it down a bit and try not to hit the belt there. There we go. So I'll just go ahead and stamp that out across all the bolts, and I guess this is a good time to ask a question if there is one while I paint this out.
We actually had a couple here, Wiktor. One of them was, and this has relates to the projection painting. I know Eric it kind of answered part of it, but Stephen is asking, wouldn't projection painting work if you loaded in the picture and then placed it on the UV, next apply a mask to it and paint in that part that you want?
Do you know about that, Eric?
Well, I guess it would technically work. I mean, one of the powers of Quixel is that it's in Photoshop, and I mean you can at any point edit things the old school way. You can any edits that you make in Photoshop is carried over to the suite. So might not be the most elegant solutions, but yeah, that would probably work.
There you go, Stephen. So,
yeah, pretty much anything you are used to doing without the suite, you can do with the suite as well. Since, as Eric said, it's straight in Photoshop, so any old techniques you have, you can just continue using.
Cool. And actually, Stephen, I've used that. I remember using that old school method as well before 3D paint packages were available. So, and we have another question. Any recommended programs to extract normal maps?
I use XNormal. I know there's a lot of different ones, but that's the one I've been using ever since I was in like 3D art school. So that's the one I would recommend, and it's very easy to use.
Cool. And we'll take a couple just questions, like one or two more, and then we'll have you continue, Victor.
Yeah, sure.
And this actually is probably more for Eric, but does film projects also use Quixel as a software of choice?
Yeah, some VFX companies are using the Quixel suite. As Victor mentioned, you can go up to 8K resolution, which is it might not be Smaug from Lord of the Rings, but it will certainly be enough for a lot of things for VFX. So yeah, a lot of people are using it, and you can actually upscale even beyond the 8K if you like. I did a project once when I tried 16K just for fun. Which was it kind of worked. It's really cool. So you can upscale things very well from the suite as well. And obviously you don't have to go 8K to 16K. You can go 2K to 4K if you want more performance out of it. Mm-hmm. That was a very long answer to a very short question.
And I know there's also other industries, because this was something that was a surprise to me, that Tesla, NASA, and a couple of these industries that I wouldn't expect to be clients of Quixel are utilizing it as well. So
yeah, they are, and it's really cool to see, and hopefully that will carry over with Megascans as well. Something that we're very happy about, and maybe we didn't foresee that when we started. So cool. That's really cool.
And speaking of, since we're kind of talking about, we have this asset in front of us and you're texturing it, Victor. Mm-hmm. So we have a question. Can I fix seams, paint in 3D with Endo or Dedo on import normal?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by import normal, but you can paint across seams. You can cover up seams really well using the 3D painting feature. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but I do believe there's also a hide seams function in the Dynamask editor.
Yeah, there is, and also something that we've been working on as a planned feature is like the clone tool, which would make it possible to erase seams better in the actual texture as well.
Mm.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll let you just continue, Victor, and as like we'll kind of just go back and forth with some of the questions.
Yep, sure. So what I just did there was I just stamped out like a white color in the mask across the bolts here, tweaked the reflectance value to make them a bit less shiny, and I also tweaked the post processes here to make it look a bit hotter. So like these are this is the post process menu. You have the screen space, same occlusion, CCD blooming, contrast, and so on. Very easy to use. And there are also presets that you can use. Well, you can save your own presets as well, but it comes bundled with 14 different presets here that you can use. So what I'll do next here is, like as I said before, we're getting pretty close to having all the material IDs assigned here. So I'll go ahead and assign a material to the padding here. And I'm pretty sure leather isn't very much used in space, but I'm going to be using a leather anyways. So I think I'll be going for something like this.
Cold seat in space, probably, if it's leather.
Yeah.
My initial reaction. I'll
Yeah.
just answer a question here while you're doing that. Discord, yeah, that's exactly how you pronounce it. Asked which software to create the ID map, and we have a plugin for that that's called Quixel Colors, which is for Maya and Max. And we're currently looking to export it to other 3D packages as well. It's a very quick plugin to create the color ID map, from which you can make a very quick batch texture pass, which we'll demonstrate later on. But to answer your question, Quixel Color is a good way to create color ID maps.
Yeah, so what I'm doing here is, as you saw before, I took the leather material and assigned it, and I'm just trying to make it look a bit less leathery. So I'm going to be reducing the texture intensity in the albedo, and also adjust it a little bit in the normal map. So all the different maps, you can control the opacity and the texture intensity individually. So if I lower the intensity in the albedo, it's going to stay the same in the gloss. But you can also control them all at the same time. So let's say I only want the albedo to have this layer showing. I could just hold down Control while dragging this, and it's going to set the opacity to 0 across all the different maps. So we check that out. It's going to be set to 0, and I can just set it back to 100 in albedo, for example. There's a nice little trick. So I'll just go ahead and set it all back to 100%, like so. So I think that looks pretty cool, like sort of synthetic, sort of soft and wrinkly. So I'll go for that for now. Oh yeah, and one thing I also did before that's worth mentioning is I assigned the chrome to the buckles, and I also painted them in on the bolts, as I showed before. Oh, I have to pull them back up here. But what I also did to assign to another ID was to hold down C and Control while I clicked this ID here. And that just added an additional ID, color ID to the sort of ID pool. And another way, there are several different ways you can do this. Another way of assigning a material to a color ID is to right-click this one here, this Dynamask button, and click Mask Layer to IDs. This is going to bring up the ID linker or ID editor. And as you can see here, we have the 2 different IDs assigned. So you can add or you can remove by just navigating and clicking on this map here. So I'll just close that down because I'm happy with it as it is. So now that we have a good base to work with, I want to go in and start doing some more manual stuff, tweak the materials, make them a bit more custom and more interesting to look at. So the first one I want to work on is the white plastic here. So I'll go ahead and go into this group, because anything I add in here is only going to be assigned to that ID that is linked to. So in this case, it's the white part here, like the actual shell. So I'll go ahead and add a material inside of the material to make the material even smarter. So I'll go into the metal category here. And also worth mentioning that just because it's a metal doesn't mean it only has to be a metal. Like right now I'm going to be using this steel to create scratches on the plastic. So you can really use the materials in interesting and sort of original ways. So right now it really is not what I'm after, but I'm going to be using the trick that I just mentioned where I lower the opacity across all the maps except one. I'll go inside the gloss map here using the tabs, and I'll hold down Control and drag the opacity all the way down. And I'll increase it back up only in the gloss map. And let's just find a good angle here. So now we can see there is, I'm not sure how the quality is, but there are a lot of small scratches here, subtle scratches. So I'll go ahead and decrease the scale to make them a bit smaller. So these are just like micro details, and they're only shown in the gloss map. So if we check out the albedo by pressing 1 here, it's not here, but it's in the gloss map by pressing 2, and it's not in the specular either, or the normal map. So it's isolated only to the gloss map. So I think this looks really cool, but it's a bit too uniform. It's just all across the entire model here. So what I'll do is I'll go into the Dynamask editor to paint away some of the areas. And there we go. So I'll be using a very soft brush at a low opacity. And the controls here are very similar to Photoshop. So like you press B for brush, you press E for the eraser. You can see them toggle up here. And instead of holding Alt, you hold down B, like dragging to change the size, change the opacity, and so on. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you should feel right at home here. So what I'll do is, like, maybe I don't want the scratches on the back here. I'll just paint that away. We can preview the mask. We can see I'm in the area. Doesn't look very pretty in the mask mode, but it works well in full shaded. Also wanted to remove it, these areas here. Like that. Perfect. So once I'm happy with that, I'll just accept the mask, and it'll be applied to the layer here, as you can see here in the small preview. I'm pretty happy with the plastic here. Got a lot of nice little subtle changes going on. Really hope the quality is good enough.
It's a bit hard to see though, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll just zoom in a bit and let it settle for a while. There we go. And have a sip of water.
Cool. So while you're having that sip of water, I have a couple of other questions. What scripts or plugins do you use typically?
Scripts and plugins. I actually don't use very many plugins or scripts. I use Maya when modeling mainly. I use Maya 3D Max and a little bit of Modo as well, but I actually mainly use like my custom hotkeys and simple scripts that I've made myself, and like some small scripts that I pick up here and there. But I actually don't use any plugins, like proper plugins, other than Quixel Colors, which I use to create the color ID maps. Which is it's a very easy to use plugin, pretty much as a window full of different material or colors with names that gets assigned to the current selection. Mm-hmm. They can bake out. Yeah. So I don't use many plugins, but I do recommend setting up hotkeys because it really saves a lot of time. Like there are times where I just done tactical face palms like for minutes for like. When I make a hotkey for something that maybe like it's maybe 5 clicks that I can reduce down to a single press of a key, so you can save so much time, especially if it's something you do very often, repetitively.
Cool. And so in this session so far, it's been great for a more realistic look. What would you recommend for someone who's trying to do something more stylized, a more stylistic approach?
So the workflow really doesn't change depending on the style you're going for. Like it's still going to be the same UI. You're still going to have access to the same materials, and all the controls are going to be the same. The only thing that really changes is how you treat those materials. So, for example, I could still use all the same materials for this if I were going for a more hand painted or stylized look, but I would just have to go in and change the reflectance, like maybe reduce the gloss map or glossiness quite a bit, and add some more light information or baked light information. I will actually show you a little bit from the Dynamask editor, and using that you can create some really cool effects using the object space normals to create like light from above or shadows from below, or adding gradients to your asset or a character and so on. So I would say the approach would be pretty much the same. It would just be the materials would get a different treatment. Or you could just create your own materials. Let's say you have like a I don't know, like a tiling wood texture that you like to use, like a hand-painted tiling wood or plank material. You can just create your own material for Dido. So let's see here. Yeah, so you click this button here, import a custom material, and you can load in all your tiling textures or patterns, and they will be available in the material browser.
We're also adding, we're working right now on a few stylized tutorials actually, as I'm sure most of you have seen. The majority of the tutorials we have are for more realistic stuff. So we are doing some stylized tutorials that will hopefully be able to.
Cool. And John has a question. How would you use it on a model with multi-UV tiles?
Yeah, it's actually quite straightforward. You create different mesh groups. So each mesh group has its own UV set that's supposed to be, it needs to be in the first UV tile. So when you import that into the base creator, the suite recognizes that it's multiple mesh groups. So you will have the options to set input maps for each of your UV sets, basically. And it's it's very easy, and you can switch between those UV sets inside the suite seamlessly as well.
Cool. Very cool. All right, so I'll let you just continue working, Victor.
Thank you. Yeah, so same old, adding some more materials. Like now I'm working on the like seat belts here. So I added a black cotton, I think it is, or jeans maybe. Or denim. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it works pretty well. So I'm just increasing the glossiness here to make it look a bit more synthetic. And I'll also go in and reduce the texture intensity of the normal map here to make it a bit less wrinkly. So maybe around 12 or so. And that works. And the reason why I started working on this is because I wanted to show you the Dynamask editor, which is a key component to working with Dido. So because so far I've pretty much just been painting and assigning materials, and I haven't talked about the key component to creating your materials. So what I'll do is, you see all these little seams here, like the sewing on here. I want these to be a different color, and once again, I haven't added those to my ID map. So a way to go around this is to create a new layer, which will just be a blank layer, like a gray or white layer here. And I'll go into the Dynamask editor, and this time I'll go into mask mode only. So I'll just hold down Alt while clicking this, or I can just regular click and click no in the dialog. But so right now the entire thing is masked or unmasked. I'm not sure which way it goes, but here you can see a whole bunch of different presets. So we have like rust presets. I can maybe take a look at a few. So if I just click on the top fumes here, it's going to apply that to my model. And if I want to use this, I just click accept, but that's not what I'm going for. So I'll set it back to the blank one. And also worth mentioning is that any mask you create, you can save a preset from, and it will be added to this list. So what I'll do here is I'll browse through this list of different maps. So these are the maps that you input in the base creator when creating the project, and it's also the textures that were baked. So for example, the object space direction map here, that was created when making the project automatically using 3Do. Same as the gradient direction. And if you're unsure what the gradient direction map is, it's pretty much a gradient XYZ or RGB mask going from top to bottom, or I can just show you, or right to left and front to back. It's extremely handy when you want to, like, if, for example, if you're working on a character and you only want a detail to be on the bottom, like on the feet or legs and so on. So that's a gradient direction map, and that's created automatically when you set up your project, so nothing you need to learn how to bake. But what I want to do here is I want to use the curvature to isolate the seams on the belts. So what I did here is I just checked it and set it to normal blending mode. And if we zoom in here, we can see we already have a pretty much what I'm after. But I'll just increase the contrast by quite a bit to make them pop out a bit more. So I think that'll work. Maybe just a tad more.
I'll just cut in here, Victor,
Yep.
sorry, and I'll answer Kenneth's question with a absolutely.
I'm sorry, did you disappear?
Eric?
Sorry, did I cut out?
Yeah, you did.
You just mute yourself. And also, Eric, you can answer that directly just to the chat, so that way everybody sees it. Because if it's regarding to the Megascan one you're referring to.
There was, of course, the question as well how it compares to Substance Painter.
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking the question as it relates to Megascan. Yeah, it's up to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's a question we get a lot. To be honest, I don't know the Substance Painter very well. I don't think Victor knows it either. I mean, I think people should try it. There is a trial for this week for 30 days, and you know, I think we have our strengths, and I'm sure they do too. But yeah, I think it's up to the artist to kind of determine what tool they want to use. And to add to that, I'm sorry, Eric, but as you mentioned, the strength is just one. Yeah, I completely agree because, as I said, with a lot of the sessions we've had from the guys from Naughty Dog and Pete Zoppi from Treyarch, you see everybody kind of just using multiple tools, to get certain results, right? So I think at that point it's really a matter of preference. There's both strengths and weaknesses with all things. So. Yeah, absolutely. So I think everyone should kind of try it out themselves. It's a personal preference. We've gone for like we made our tools from the artist point of view. We're all former artists at Quixel, so try to keep it simple. Empowering the artist. And
exactly. So
like a personal preference for us is Photoshop. We like Photoshop, so we think it's a strength that it's there. So if you like that, I'm sure you'll enjoy the suite.
Cool. And so speaking of, just quick, so what would you say, is one of the strengths for Quixel?
Well, I think the strength. I don't know. Should you do that, Victor, or should I do that?
Or you can do it, and I'll just continue texturing.
Sure. Well, I think the strength is first that it's very easy to get into. We have a whole bunch of tutorials, and I think if you go through like 2 or 3 of them, you will have a very good idea of how the tool works. And it's a very non-destructive workflow as well. You can kind of go back, replace textures and values without anything breaking, which I personally like to do. And I think we have a good material library as well. I think people seem to enjoy that. So I'd say that it's quite simple and flexible.
Cool. No, that's great. And you want to add to that, Victor?
Nope. I think Eric said it very well.
Okay, cool. We have a question from James. Could you demonstrate some of the masking patterns further? Is it possible to mask materials from the pattern?
Absolutely. So that's actually exactly what I wanted to show you with this detail I'm working on. So I'm creating just a regular edgeware detail here. So I'm using the curvature map here, and I'm just increasing the contrast. I can play around with the sliders here to get different frequencies and so on. But it looks very procedural. It goes just all the way across. It doesn't break up or anything. So what I'll be doing here is I'll actually be using a material to break it up. So if I click the little icon here, or the square next to texture, it brings up the material browser that we saw before. And in here I can choose whatever material I want. So let's say I want to use like marble, for example, just to demonstrate. It's going to load that and break it up. So let's say I invert my curvature. We could actually see I thought we would. Yeah, it just inverts. Sorry, but yeah, it uses the material to break up the edges or the mask. Actually, this works surprisingly well for this. I'll just, so yeah, if you open this up here, you can see we have the gloss, specular, and albedo, and these sliders all depend on the input texture. So let's say I chose the bricks here, we are going to get different sliders here. So one thing that I very much like to do is use this one here, like the mud material, because it's very large and chunky. So what I like to do here is to just disable all of the maps except for the height, because it gives you these very nice soft breakup here. So I can also increase the scale to make it even softer and larger. So that's one way to use materials with masking.
You can also add that, yeah, sorry, you can.
No, go ahead.
The masking patterns as well. Like right now, Wiktor is using the included megascans to mask with, like the materials, but you can also use just a black and white mask.
Mm-hmm.
And as a personal preference, like I made a few of these, and for me, I really enjoy either making them by hand or going out taking photos, making it tileable, and making a really good like masking texture. Because when you start building your own library of your preferred textures to mask with, it goes so fast when you're working, and so that's really satisfying. So that's something I would recommend for people to do. And it's, I mean, making a tileable, it's very quick and easy with Photoshop, obviously. So I'd recommend that. It's a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
I'll try to get through some of the questions that have been asked here.
Yeah, we just had a question as relates from Tanya. Is there a way to increase the size of the UI?
There will be, absolutely. A lot of people are starting to use like 4K monitors and stuff like that now, so tend to make the UI quite small. So that's something that we kind of have to compensate for.
Cool. And then Nico had a question: is any chance for UV Island select in near future?
And that's also something that we're kind of looking into for sure. I mean, that would be a great addition.
Cool. And we have a couple other questions, but it's going to just jump around from some of the questions that we already had listed prior. So, so what are you? So, what's the learning curve for picking up Quixel? I know we're talking about just some of these amazing tools, and we're seeing how you're able to just fly through texturing this asset in such a short time frame. For someone just picking it up, what would you say is a good learning curve?
Well, if you have like a basic understanding of 3D and basic understanding, we have tutorials that go from absolute basic to expert. But let's say you have a somewhat basic understanding of the texturing for PBR. I would say that if you watch 2 to 3 tutorials that are, well, they range from like 10 minutes to an hour. But if you would spend around 1 hour watching tutorials, I would dare to say that you could handle the tool from that point. So the learning, the learning is quite fast, I would say.
Okay, cool. And go ahead, Wiktor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick that there's like one more thing that I want to show in Dido. I see we're running out of time soon. And that's the color painting feature. Like I showed you the Dynamask painting before, where I was in the Dynamask editor and affected the mask. But there's also a color paint mode where you can paint in full RGB across all the different maps. So I just thought I'd real quick show you, like, it's the exact same controls except that you paint in RGB. So very handy if you want to, for example. Like I want to do, like I love my arrows, like red arrows all everywhere. So I'll just go ahead and like choose an arrow, rotate it around, enable symmetry, and I'll paint it out like that. And
very sci-fi. Very sci-fi.
Yeah, very sci-fi. Not very pretty, way too big, but just to show you how it works. And you can also, as I said before, work in separate maps. So one thing that I played around with before was you can create like handprints and stuff. So I'm gonna choose the hand here. I'm in the gloss map, by the way. So I'm gonna choose a handprint, and now I'm only working the gloss map. So if I stamp that out there, we're gonna see a nice sweaty palm on the.
I think that's my hand, so please don't do anything weird with that. There was someone who asked if you can resize the 3D window, which is of course very, very possible.
Yes, you can.
So with spacebar, you toggle the UI. It's worth mentioning as well, and you can resize it however you like.
Yep. That was John who had that question. John as well as Tanya. So hopefully that answered your question. Could you repeat that answer again, Victor?
The resize?
Yeah, increasing the size of the window.
So yeah, you just press space to enable the UI and the resize controls. So you just click a corner and you resize it to whatever size you want. And you can also full screen it by clicking the window size button up there in the right corner.
Cool. So John and Tanya, hopefully that answered your question. You're going to say, Victor?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I was talking before about using your old Photoshop techniques. So I'm doing that here. So the triangles that I painted before, I can go in, just double-click the layer, and I can use my own, my favorite trick in Photoshop using the blend if. So I can just go ahead and blend it with the underlying layer, refresh, and I could even go ahead and adjust the color of it, tint it and adjust it afterwards. So once again, a very good thing about being actually inside of Photoshop while working.
Cool. And we have a question from Kenneth. Is there any tweaking that has to be done when using RenderMan or Arnold for final rendering? He said he searched through the site, but he couldn't find anything.
So we have export profiles that are made. I think Victor is showing there. So you can export to a specific target, which there you go. Yeah. So the textures are kind of tweaked to that target. So for Arnold, for instance, we just released a preview patch today in our tools group. So if you're not a member there, I urge you to go there. And we'll basically update the Arnold profile, and feedback from that is that it's very, very good now. So it should be working well. Okay,
cool. Great. And Vince has a question. Can you add or change the base textures you add at the beginning of the project?
Absolutely. Yes, you can. Yep, you just very straightforward. You do whatever changes you want to do to them, and you just go to the re-import or re-render project, and it's going to take those input maps and regenerate the project using that new input. So if you add bolts or screws, whatever to your normal map, it's going to recreate the curvature map and assign wear and tear and rust accordingly.
Okay, great. Perfect. So hopefully that answered your question, Vince. And George has a question. How can I succeed hand-painted stylized at Quixel? George, you probably weren't a part of the session earlier, but Eric had mentioned that they're going to be releasing some new videos. Yeah. That's going to cover that. So definitely be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, and there actually is a video. I think it's a hand-painted orc on the Quixel website where I go over the color painting features.
Okay, great. Eric, could you actually share that link with the guys here? I think that would be great for them to have.
Absolutely.
Great. And Todd is asking, is Quixel on the Mac version of Photoshop compatible?
So it's not compatible right now. It's something that we're working on. It's taking a bit longer than expected. A lot of people are asking for it, so we are absolutely regarding that as a priority. And we actually just staffed up that team further. So a Mac version is coming.
Cool. And I'll take one question, and I'll have you just continue, Victor. And since we're talking about tutorials, someone is asking, do you know someone who uses Cinema 4D for a tutorial on your YouTube channel?
Do you know that, Eric? You're
I'm not sure about that specifically. I don't think so, but I mean, it's the principles are the same for any 3D programs. Is he referring to the preparation part or the rendering part?
Not clear. They didn't specify.
Okay,
So,
but it should be very, very compatible either way, so that should be fine.
Okay, cool. And so, Victor, I'll let you go on. We have, a few more questions, but I know we're running out of time, so I'll definitely let you go ahead and finish this up. This is looking great already. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm pretty much. I mean, I'm at a stage where I would happily bring this into my scene. But I think there's one last thing that I want to show you that's extremely helpful and time-saving when it comes to Dido, and that's the batching feature. I'm not sure if there were any questions about that, but yeah, I'm going to answer it now. So what I'll do is I'll just close down the project.
Yeah, we actually did have a question, Victor, as it relates to like how would you batch render large amounts of texture. So
awesome.
I guess it's a perfect time for that.
Yeah, great. So it's the same thing as before. You just specify your inputs, like the mesh and the IDs and so on, and the occlusion. But the thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to actually assign a ID preset. And what an ID preset is pretty much a collection of smart materials that it assigns to corresponding colors. So if you use the plugin Quixel Colors to create your material IDs, the current smart material library is going to link up with that out of the box. So right now it shows a weathered materials ID preset, which is the standard materials like chrome, rubber, wood, and so on. But it's got some like directionality, and some of the materials have more wear and tear. So with this selected, we can see here we have a nice shiny Make Art button. And what's going to happen here is it's going to bake the inputs here that I specified, and it's going to be using the ID preset, weather materials, and assign it to my material IDs, which you see here. So I click Make Art, and what it's going to do here is I think it's going to be creating 16 different materials across 4, I believe, different maps. So it's going to take around 1.5 minutes or something. So
can I answer some questions in the meantime?
Of course.
Question time. So Megascans was part of like buying the other programs. So Megascans is a separate service from the suite. So it will require a separate license. And also someone asked.
I think that's it. I think that was the main thing. Yeah. And I have a question as relates to how long. With your workflow, how long does it take to create some of your assets? Like looking at some of the amazing environments and art that you create on your portfolio. What's a good time to create assets? I know this chair is taking you in real time, all of in terms of at least texturing, all of about 30 minutes or so.
I'm sorry. There we go. Strange orientation. I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear the question.
So how long does it take to create? For you to create some of your assets?
I usually spend between 15 minutes to 4 hours for a game-ready asset. So that chair, like I've textured a couple times now. So that one takes around 20 minutes for me. The first time it took me about, I believe, an hour and a half, I think. Maybe 2 hours. But like I go back and forth a little bit, so I add some time here and there since it's non-destructive. But for smaller assets, it's around 15 minutes if the base materials or bundled materials work well out of the box. But if I need to do tweaking and a lot of hand painting, adding decals and stuff, it's add a couple hours to that. But I rarely spend more than a work day on anything at all. I can't remember the last time I worked more than a day on an asset texturing.
Now, speaking of assets and texturing, how long did it take you to create this badass character we're looking at now?
Yeah, so we just textured a character while I was answering your question. So 4K textures, 4 different textures took around, I think, 90 seconds. So we can take a look at the different textures here in the back. So normal map with added micro details, gloss map, specular, albedo, and pretty much done. So now we can just go ahead and add decals, add some war paint if you want, add different maps like emissive and so on. So it's pretty much a game-ready base in 90 seconds.
Cool. That's impressive.
Yeah, and all of these, just like before, you can go in and you can change the, you can go in and change all the materials. So I can go in here, I can change the color of the anodized aluminum, for example, if I want it to be blue. So completely non-destructive. And if you like all the changes you make here, you can just save that as a new ID preset, and you can assign it to upcoming projects. So I like to say that every hour spent is an hour earned, because nothing you do is lost. So all the changes you make to material, let's say you create a great rubber material that's got some nice stress, wear and tear, and so on. You can just save that and reuse it, and you can, like, all the artists at the studio can use updated ID presets to update their old meshes, or you can just send over a cool material to your friend, and so on. It's cool. Really, yeah.
And I have one for you, Eric, which is, will Half-Life 3 be textured with Quixel?
I wish I had the insight into how to know if they're working on Half-Life 3. Unfortunately, my job is not that cool.
Yeah. So Nathaniel is asking, is there a way to create seamless materials, seamless textures across UV boundaries?
I mean, yes and no. You can certainly use the tools that are in the suite now to reduce seams, but we are working on a more proper cloning tool, which would make you can actually paint the materials themselves, which will in essential let you paint out seams.
Cool. And Dwight is asking, are we going to see a collection of stylized textures added to the suite?
Yeah, I think so. It's something that we kind of looked at more and more lately. I mean, the reason why there are so few right now is honestly because the artists in Quixel are not that well versed in stylized textures, so we're kind of just looking at people to make them. But it's something that pops up more and more. So I mean, we're more than happy to add more stylized textures.
Cool. And Martin is asking. My question was also, can I fix UV seams on, imported normals?
Wait, ignore UV seams on normals, or what's he saying? I'm sorry.
He's asking if can I fix UV seams on? I'm assuming that's imported normals. Martin, could you clarify that question? And Todd is asking, can all of the textures be exported and used in Lightwave?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
I believe there is a preset for Lightwave. If not, you can just use another similar preset and use it in Lightwave. I'm not sure what sort of inputs Lightwave requires.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Might be worth mentioning that you can actually add and remove any maps during the work that you're doing. So if your renderer requires an additional map, Wiktor can very easily just add that map to this project, and it will be created.
Cool. Todd likes that. He likes that answer.
And so, now we just add a bump.
I'm happy.
Exactly.
So Dan is asking, sorry.
Yeah. Is it possible to save your own smart material to be used later on, like custom with texture preset?
Yeah, it's something that we do all the time, and something we absolutely recommend doing. There will be a very neat share function as well in upcoming versions of the suite, where you can share it with just your friends or publicly. But you can also save presets for the Dynamask editor as well, which is something that I would recommend people to do. It saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
Cool.
One thing that I just realized we haven't talked about that I realized when I added a bump map is that, I added a bump map. I tweaked the value here for the paint layer on the black metal, and that gets added automatically to the normal map. So let's say I wanted the paint to stand out a bit. I can just tweak value, and it's automatically getting merged with the normal map on export. So you can add some even more depth and micro details to your normal.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Great. So Gabriel was asking, is there a specific video where it teaches the use different techniques in Quixel?
I'm
How to
pasting
use
the
different techniques. So I would imagine that's on the YouTube, the Quixel YouTube channel.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is the same as the website. It's the same videos. So I mean, ranges from absolute beginners to expert level. So you should be able to find everything that you would need there to learn the tool.
And it's free.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely.
So
and there's also project files attached to most tutorials, so you can follow along using this. Yeah.
So this
Perfect.
actually that Wiktor is using, that's a model that's available, so people can download it and play with it.
Yep.
Great. And John is asking, is it possible to create custom ID presets with custom materials that would allow custom materials to be shared across different props and textures,
Absolutely.
like transferring gun material from a revolver to a rifle?
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
and it's actually why it's there. That's it's use of it, I'd say.
Yeah, so it's completely customizable. So let's say you want to use purple for rubber, you can do that. Just to make sure all the artists or like in the studio or all your friends or whatever use the same colors, and you can create your custom material that gets linked to that color. So yeah, you can customize everything. You can save custom mask presets, save custom ID presets, you can save your own smart materials, regular materials, patterns, like everything you can create yourself.
Cool. And it's Martin rephrased it, but it's still a little confusing. But I guess his question is, can he fix UV seams on imported normal maps? I think that's what he's asking.
So if there's a visible seam on your normal map, if you can fix that using Undo, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
There is no like proper feature for it, but I mean you can tweak it. Like as I said, there's no feature to repair seams, but you can like cover it and you can try and adjust it. But seams usually depend on a problem with the baking, like hard edges and so on. So yeah, there is no way of correcting seams in Undo, I'm afraid.
Okay. For normals.
For normals, exactly. But
Yeah.
you can create like seamless tiling normals and stuff like that. Like the normals created with Undo are automatically like they're automatically tiling if you specify that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Nathaniel is asking, can user-created materials be loaded from a folder outside of the Quixel install so they can be added to source control, like Perforce, to keep a team's material synced?
Well, you import your materials into the suite, and it's kind of they're stored in one of the maps. So that's one of the reasons why we're creating this share function that will be available from right within the browser. Actually, is because it's much easier than syncing through Perforce. So that update should be coming very soon, and I think it will cover that need for a team. That's what it's designed to do.
Cool. I think Nathaniel would be happy to hear that. And Pablo's asking, could I create refractive/translucent materials?
Yes, you can. There is no way to preview refraction in 3Do at the moment, but you can create refraction maps. So refraction gloss, refraction, regular refraction, and fog color. So you can create the maps, but there's no way of currently previewing them directly in 3Do.
Okay, cool.
Translucency, though, you can.
Yeah.
Cool. And we have a few more questions, but as I said, guys, it seems like we're running out of time. We talked about a lot of these amazing features, and just some of the strengths, obviously, of Quixel. So with all that being said, how much, one of the questions is, how much does it cost?
So there are 3 different license versions. It's academic, which is $69. It's indie hobby freelancer is all the same. It's $139. Commercial, it's $549. But there is a sale right now for 40%. So the lowest, the academic version is at $39, and the indie hobby freelancer is at $79. So it's a good time to snatch it up.
Exactly, and I have to say, it's like from a lot of the other twos, it's definitely one of the I know someone had asked, it's like, what are some of the strengths? It's like, I definitely think the price point is definitely one of the huge strengths for Quixel in terms of what, they offer. So, but great. Well, guys, as I said, I'm sorry for some of the guys that haven't gotten a chance to, get to your questions. As Eric mentioned, we're going to be doing another session just focusing exclusively on Megascan. So we'll keep you guys updated with that. It's like, so that's something that you guys don't want to miss. I mean, some of the images that Victor was showing early on looked phenomenal. So for those of you guys who didn't get a chance to see it, with the replay, once we send out the link, definitely make sure to check that out. So Victor, Eric, thank you so much. This was a great session. I know that a lot of people, were pretty excited about it and got a lot of, of their questions answered. So thank you so much for taking the time.
No, pleasure. And for those who didn't get their questions answered, I would recommend you to go to our tools group on Facebook. It's manned, pretty much around the clock. So any questions you have, just go there and paste your questions, and someone will answer them very shortly.
Yep, and it's named the Quixel Tools Group.
And there's also a lot of cool art there, so it's a fun place to be.
Yep.
Someone is asking real quick, are updates free?
Yeah, updates are free. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. There you go. That was answered, JJJ. So just had to make sure I got that extra J in there. So yeah, but anyway, guys, Nico is saying Quixel rocks. Woohoo! So
thank you very much.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, thank you so much, Victor and Eric, for the session, and guys, thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot more of these lined up. So we'll be sending out. We're going to be hopefully sending out a calendar within the next couple of weeks. We're going to be featuring a couple of movies and games. They're going to be coming out similar to what we did with Naughty Dog. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you, Quixel, and once again, let us know when once we could do that live session with Megascan. I know that's going to be a sold out one, so it's going to be great.
Yeah, looking forward to that one.
All right, great. All right, take care, guys. You guys have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.